From NBC News, Democratic lawmakers say they'll travel to El Salvador to push for Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release. Senator Chris Van Hollen, not Halen, said that if the Maryland man, whom the administration acknowledged having deported mistakenly, wasn't back in the U.S. by midweek, he would travel to El Salvador. My favorite response to this and Cory Booker was, I think it was Will Chamberlain, who says, Nayib Bukele has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. And Jack Posobiec responded with, I agree. I think all of the Democrats should go to the El Salvadoran prison. Yes. So it's not just Van Hollen. Also, Cory Booker and others are planning a trip to fly to save the Maryland man. I just can't even. These people are evil. The Democrats are evil. I don't care if you're concerned about the deportation. That's fine. Just be honest. It is a man from El Salvador. He had 2 deportation orders to be returned to El Salvador. He had a temporary stay. Initially, the White House said, we were following through the deportation orders, and they made a mistake because the filing for, my understanding is the filing for the stay is not stored in the same capacity. So they get a big list of people with deportation orders. They go deport them and go, wait, that guy had a stay. And they went, okay, well, there's nothing we can do about that now. El Salvador's got him. Now what the argument is, I believe Stephen Miller's arguing this. The Alien Enemies Act, once this organization was deemed a terrorist organization, supersedes the judge's stay, and we can remove alien invaders. And the Supreme Court agreed Trump can remove them. They agreed no one can force the president to engage in foreign policy actions, but in the event Abrego Garcia is able to be returned to the U.S., Trump must facilitate that. What that means, I don't know. But Democrats have decided to die on this hill, as it were. And is this the best they got? Is the only issue they have?
It's a big issue. I don't know if it's the best issue they got, but like if a president can say, because we're in a state of emergency since 2001, this group of people is a foreign terrorist organization now because they have ties to foreign country that we're at war with or that we're going to be at war with, then they can just deport them because they're a terrorist, because they said they were a terrorist.
It doesn't really reflect what happened, did it?
He said, MS-13 is a terrorist organization, then that was their grounds to throw out a guy who had a stay.
Thank you, Ian. Let me take you home on this one. So I appreciate your response. I think you're actually referring to the NDAA 2012 indefinite detention provision that was signed into law by Barack Obama, which stated exactly as you said, that if someone was part of Al-Qaeda, involved in September 11th, or an enemy and waging war against the United States, they could be indefinitely renditioned in black sites anywhere in the world, if they wanted it. I believe that got repealed in 2024, so only last year. Now back to the main story we're talking about, where a guy who had a deportation order was deported.
Yeah,
you were saying?
Oh, the guy that had the stay on his deportation order was deported?
The guy with 2 deportation orders who was here illegally and a member of a criminal gang, MS-13, who was deported mistakenly, is in the custody of his own country for which he committed crimes, is now in his own prison, and we have no authority to get him out of that prison. So, yes.
So, what were you going to say, Phil?
Well, that was my understanding. The guy that we were talking about was an illegal alien. So the fact that he's deported is perfectly consistent with the law.
Well, if you
being that he was associated with MS-13, that's why Trump calls him a terrorist. But that's kind of notwithstanding the fact that he's here illegally, right? If he's an illegal alien and he's not, he's come here illegally, whatever the context, ship him home.
Well, if he has a stay on his deportation, you got to wait.
Why?
Because there's a stay on his deportation.
Yeah, but what was
is there a context in which something may supersede a stay from a judge?
Always. War.
But they'd have to prove that there had been a crime.
Or a terrorist designation under the Alien Enemies Act, for which the Supreme Court ruled that he does have the authority to deport people under?
Potentially. Here's my issue with it, though. Deportation's one thing, but they didn't just deport him. They sent him to a prison with no due process, where I assume he's not going to have a trial there either, correct?
Oh, that's a matter for a foreign country. I mean, we're not going to invade China and try and force China to release people from their prisons.
Why are we putting people in prison? Why can't we just
El
deport
Salvador
them?
did.
So they're charging him with crimes?
In El Salvador, if you are a member of MS-13, you go to jail. It's a crime. Okay. And that's how Nayib Bukele started. He started rounding up all the gang members. They made it illegal, and they started throwing everybody in prison. The criticism there was that innocent people were getting wrapped up in it. But that's a matter for a foreign country. Now, I do think there's concerns over when we deport people, and we can, what El Salvador does after the fact is of concern. But at the same time, the question as it pertains to this is, a Salvadoran man is in a Salvadoran jail for crimes in El Salvador. Next question, I guess. So the concern there is, if we are just deporting anybody because we can deport them. And Trump is sending them to El Salvador. And then El Salvador is putting them in prison. There's a chain there where I have concerns with it.
Yeah.
The challenge, of course, however, is the due process afforded to illegal immigrants in this country is, are you here legally or not? No, then you leave. The Supreme Court ruled that these people are all entitled to habeas hearings, justifying whether or not they are to be held. That's the point. Okay. Are you here illegally? You are? Then we can deport you. If El Salvador, after the fact, imprisons them, the challenge then is the foreign policy action between the U.S. and El Salvador, not due process in the United States, for which that's negotiating power between Trump and El Salvador. So I do have concerns over if people... Here's the challenge, I suppose. Conservatives are going to say, we don't care. You came into this country illegally, that's your problem. And I believe Jack Posobiec mentioned that it was a deterrent. You come to this country illegally, maybe you'll be on the plane to El Salvador. I'm not a fan of making examples of people like that. In this specific capacity, the man who was here did have a stay. If it is true, as they initially argued, that he was mistakenly deported because I believe he had 2 removal orders and no asylum, the question then becomes, how do you have a stay on deportation without being granted asylum? What is the cause by which a judge can grant an indefinite stay on deportation? I'd argue that's unconstitutional. A judge doesn't have the authority to give de facto citizenship to an illegal immigrant here illegally with deportation orders. Yeah. So what we're actually dealing with is a constitutional crisis by which the judiciary de facto is tried to give an individual citizenship or second-class citizenship, which to me is alarming. And then the only real argument becomes, was Trump acting in a heavy-handed manner by sending him back to El Salvador, where El Salvador is going to put him in prison?
I don't think that they're what, like you said, what El Salvador does with any of the people that go back to El Salvador, that's their problem. That's a domestic issue for that country. The United States has millions of illegal immigrants that have come in, or that had come in the previous 4 years during the during the Biden administration. President Biden himself said, we want to see a surge. We want to see people to surge the border for if you're seeking asylum. The administration allowed all kinds of breaking of the rules when it comes to the asylum claims. You shouldn't come to the United States through South America if you're looking for asylum, because Mexico's safe and there are multiple countries that these people could have stopped in. So right off the bat, it's breaking the law. The idea that we have to give everybody that's here that claimed asylum a hearing, I reject that, because they came here under false pretenses by an illegal method. They're supposed to come to ports of entry, and they didn't. They would just cross the border, and then DHS would pick them up, or the Border Patrol would pick them up. If they didn't come here and go to an actual port of entry, if they got picked up, beat it. I don't care. They don't all get. They shouldn't all get.
They're hurting actual asylum seekers and doing that. That hurts the actual people in line.
It does, but the lawlessness prior to that hurts America more. So there will be times where we will send people that are actually seeking asylum away when they may have, had they gone through the actual proper channels, when they would have been granted asylum. But because they didn't, see you later.
And I'm with you up until a point. And with him being from El Salvador, I think that makes this case less of a huge deal, because we are sending him back to a country where he's from. But if we're sending people who are not from that country back to this country to be put in prison indefinitely versus just simply deporting them, that's where my issue comes in.
I don't care where they go to. They just need to go back to their country of origin.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we should send them to El Salvador.
So
send them to wherever they're from.
The issue is Venezuela has refused to take back criminal gang members from Venezuela. So Tren de Aragua, for instance. So Trump said, then we'll send them to El Salvador. They're not Americans. The due process they get is an immigration court habeas hearing. Are you here legally or not? Can we hold you? We can. Deportation.
And see, I guess my concern around that is, where is the proof that they are terrorists? Where is the proof that they have actually committed crimes? And if they have, then send them. I don't care, right? But there has to be some kind of due process in place to make sure that we're not falsely identifying people or saying, you've got this tattoo.
What is due process?
Due process would be actual evidence, fact-finding, presenting evidence before a judge.
We don't have the resources.
No. For what reason do we want that kind of hearing?
Because we don't want to put innocent people in jail indefinitely with no hope of ever getting out.
But we're not. El Salvador is.
But we're paying El Salvador to run these prisons. By proxy, we are. And
so the question at hand, I suppose, is, right, there is a challenge in that this is our foreign policy action. This is what Trump expects to happen, but it's this nebulous circumstance where Trump says they're not Americans, so they got to go. And if they can't go home because Venezuela won't take them, El Salvador will. Mm-hmm. Where do we send them if they won't be returned if the Venezuela will not accept these deportations?
I'm fine with Gitmo. I'm perfectly fine with Gitmo.
Guantanamo Bay costs a lot of money for the American taxpayer and is limited in space.
Fair enough, but
So first, they get their due process. And the due process is literally the habeas hearing in which you're a citizen or not. Are you eligible to be here? No. Okay. So we've determined that these people have removal orders. That's the basis by which Trump went to go about deporting these individuals. They had orders for removal. If we can't send them back to Venezuela, where do we send them?
Send them anywhere else. Send them to Mexico. Send them to Canada. I mean,
Mexico
just
won't
get them
take
out
them.
of our country. But do they have to go to a prison?
It
feels very shaky to me. Like,
do you think El
has to be less
Salvador wants to
extreme.
accept criminals from Venezuela freely to walk about their streets?
I think they want to accept our dollars and will do whatever we tell them to.
Do you think El Salvador will accept criminals from Venezuela like Tren de Aragua under the agreement that they allow them to freely move about El
They're proven
Salvador?
to be criminals. And that's my whole point. If they are actually proven to be gang members or criminals here, I don't care if we send them to a prison in El Salvador. Like, my issues go away entirely. My concern is that we are saying this guy was loosely affiliated with this gang, allegedly, and we have no concrete proof of that. And then that person ends up in a jail and they have no hope to ever get out. I mean, that's dystopian.
So it sounds like you would be okay with Trump deporting all these people to El Salvador if El Salvador had a criminal hearing to determine they're gang members or not.
Probably, yeah.
I would
That
accept
make
those
me
terms.
feel much more comfortable.
So
Yeah, I mean,
then the onus is off of the United States. You're here illegally. We can't send you home. We send you to El Salvador. El Salvador, let's have a hearing to determine whether or not they're MS-13 or any other criminal gang, and then you decide with a proper hearing.
I think it's important to note that I think this was the most questionable case that they found, and overwhelmingly, most of the people that were sent to El Salvador were like very obviously Tren de Aragua gangsters. Stephen Miller said he had evidence, and I agree with you that I believe he should release it. The politics of this, I think, is very funny because I think what's happening on the Democrat side is that they're dropping this Muhammad guy because I guess it wasn't sympathetic. Mahmoud, I'm sorry.
Mahmoud Khalil.
They're dropping that guy completely. Wasn't sympathetic enough, and now you see, all these senators. What was his name again? The senator from New Jersey.
Dan Holland. Oh, no, Cory Booker?
Cory Booker, who I believe is auditioning for a 2028 run.
100%.
And
get it.
this is the issue that they're really choosing to run on, defending these Tren de Aragua gangsters. But I think we should feel good knowing that we're in good hands with Stephen Miller, because I think Stephen Miller is so singularly focused in a good way. And there's somebody in the Trump administration that we know we could trust to the fullest that will do a good job.
No,
I am
you just said
impressed.
he said he had evidence and didn't release it, but why would you trust him?
There's a lot of evidence that the government can't release. He was here illegally to begin with, and I think all of illegal
Stephen Miller's
immigrants
been great. He's
should be
been on
deported. Yeah, and so there's and I think the thing about that Stephen Miller said too was that there's evidence of him being a terrorist, and that superseded the stay that the judge had.
Yes, the American Enemies Act supersedes, when that declaration was made, it supersedes the stay. And I want to stress this point. He was not granted asylum. He was denied asylum. Okay, Abrego Garcia was denied asylum. He did not apply for asylum until way later on when he decided he wanted to stay. He entered illegally. Two different courts, a lower court and appellate court, determined he was a member of MS-13. By what constitutional grounds can a judge give de facto citizenship to an individual? That is
Do you know what the judge's explanation was?
stay on deportation over fears that if he was returned to El Salvador, he could be killed. So on what grounds can a judge say, we are not going to finalize the adjudication. We will just put a temporary stay indefinitely to allow you to live and work in the United States as if you were a citizen? That is unconstitutional as far as that makes no
what's
sense.
Weird about it is if that's all true, why didn't he meet the conditions to get asylum? That's
Because he didn't apply when he got here.
he just didn't try because
Nope.
he got the stay.
Because he was here illegally, and I believe the DOJ has accused him of working with MS-13 and human trafficking. And so the argument they've made is that he was here doing illicit deeds and never applied for asylum because he wasn't here seeking asylum. He was here trafficking human beings. And only after a certain amount of time did he actually apply, to which he was denied because he did not properly go about the law to seek asylum.
Got it.
But my concern is, again, a judge just rubber stamping, you can stay here forever.
It's a weird case.
You can't do that.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
I don't think. I mean, maybe the most hardcore leftists are arguing this. I looked into the case earlier today. It's a weird case. It's got a lot of weird factors on it.
I have a question for you, though, because I do agree we have concerns over due process, and I do have concerns over an innocent person getting wrapped up in a deportation to a Salvadoran prison. Here's the issue, though, and this is where we try to find an answer. During the Biden administration, we saw probably the largest influx of illegal immigrants into the United States. They say that it rivals some of the largest mass migrations in human history.
Yeah.
Some 10 to 20 million people migrating in the span of only a few years rivals the partition of India. When these people were allowed to come in, the Biden administration took dubious asylum requests and then immediately dropped them, creating de facto second-class citizens who are not subject to deportation, but were not here legally by any means. When Trump tries to deport them, he's barred by judges. He is blocked every which way. If Democrats are able to make the largest human migration in history, and when the people vote to stop it, are barred from stopping it, how do we solve for this problem? What do we do?
Ideally, Congress would take some action, but I think that's a pipe dream, right?
President should run right over the
okay, wait. Can
judiciary.
Congress overrule habeas rights?
Congress could, I think they could absolutely pass legislation that would overturn that procedure that they put in place. Yeah.
20 million. Let's do the low estimate. 10 million people are here illegally from Joe Biden. Trump wants to get them out. Supreme Court ruled all of them have to have a habeas hearing. That's impossible. Trump will never be able to deport these people. How do we rectify the criminal actions of the Biden administration? How do we do that?
Same way Lincoln would have run right over the judiciary. I'm serious.
Lincoln threatened to arrest a Supreme Court justice.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say arrest
I believe
them,
the chief.
But
Lincoln was never held back by the Constitution.
Not at all.
In any shape or form.
Not at all. And to be honest with you, look,
He wasn't that concerned.
When you have a lawless administration and then the people vote, this is not a 50-50 issue. This is a 70-30, 80-20 issue. The American people want the illegal aliens that came here during the Biden administration. They want them sent home. This is not something that is, well, just by a little bit, he kind of won. This is one of the many 80-20 issues that the president is on the right side of. So if the judiciary is in the way, then in my opinion, the executive should run straight over the judiciary. I don't care. There's the previous executive ran roughshod over the law in just the same fashion.
Absolutely.
And this is something, again, the American people want that fixes a problem created by the previous administration. I don't care.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.